Welcome back to Literally First Class, the podcast for female founders. I want to start by telling you a really funny story because people are always so curious about, what's in your drink? This is not a plug for a product. In fact, I can't even remember the brand, but I have a fun fact, and that is I don't really like water. So I often, this is not ice, it's a crystal. Like people come up to me at the gym, they're like, is that an ice block? Like, what's in there? It's a crystal. It's a white quartz. The whole bottom unscrews. We gave these out as a retreat gift one year. And I don't like water. I don't like just plain water. So I always add fruit or some sort of supplement to it to give it a flavor. Um, Today it's like this immune booster. But there's this really funny story. I used to drink Crystal Light before I knew that it was basically cancer inducing, disgusting, chemicals. And I'm at the gym that I was personal training at in Hollywood, which was a celebrity gym. Those of you that have followed my story long enough, I used to train celebrities. And at the time, one of my clients, Jennifer Love Hewitt, who used to take my spin class, was dating Jamie Kennedy. And so in the gym, you walk in and there's just this, it was like a boutique style gym. I wouldn't say it was super narrow, but narrow enough that, you could fit a row of treadmills and stairmasters and then other equipment for rows and cables and all that stuff. And then down the middle is just kind of a pathway where you walk to the back of the studio to go to the spin cycle place. And so that was, you had to either know somebody to work out there, work with a trainer, or you could take spin class. And that was the only two options. It wasn't a public gym. There was no membership. So I'm on the treadmill. My water at the time was bright red, and I'm running and I'm next to Jamie Kennedy. And he is, if you've had any interactions with him or seen him on TV, he literally is the same in person. He's kind of goofy and silly and a little awkward. And so as I'm running, he's taps me and I'm clearly mid workout, and he's just walking. I think he was warming up for a session or something. And he's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "What's what?" And he goes, "Your water. What's in it?" And I was like, "Oh, Crystal Light." And he's like, "Oh, does it make you, run better?" And I was like, "No, I just don't like water and I just need a flavor in my water." Of course, there are supplements that help you run better, that give you energy and things like that. But it was the most awkward interaction because he was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Huh? What?" Very strange, but cool guy. And Jennifer Love Hewitt is the sweetest ever. She used to bring her little dog in, and the thing would be shaking in the corner in its little crate. They were kind of an interesting couple too. Anyway, total side tangent and just fun story for fun's sake. But today we're going to talk about the success leak, where I see high achieving women like you, women that have really accomplished quite a bit, where I see you quietly lose time and money and energy. And honestly, I had this mentor that used to say, sometimes it's the small hinge that swings the big door. And I love that because it's so true the higher you go in success. Usually you have a pretty deep awareness of things. Usually you have a high baseline of personal development or you're growth minded. In fact, there was a study that came out recently around the one thing that most millionaires have in common, and it's that they read almost a book a week that they all had in common. Isn't that crazy? So leaders are readers, and you are growth minded. You are in the spirit of having smart success, not just having any success, right? And we talk about this all the time in my world, in my coaching containers, at our champagne club. We don't want success that builds a prison. That's not living completely fully in our purpose. And that's not really why we set out to create our own company anyway, right? So where I see women typically start to lose time and money and energy typically happens around, I see it around 2 million, 5 million, and even right before the $1 million mark. It's just because those are really sticky places, I'll say, as you're building and training to delegate, but you haven't quite passed the baton yet. And often what I see is a huge shift in the team around 2 million and 5 million, sometimes completely new team, especially if you've just set a new goal. You will find that most of your team will not in fact stick around for one reason or another. They just will not survive that next growth level, because what got you here won't get you there. You've probably heard of that book title. But I see this show up in all the ways that they are overcommitting, overthinking, and overcomplicating things, and sometimes to their own detriment. This is also where awareness is huge with the somatic work that we do, because it can show up as self-sabotage, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm just gonna launch another project, but instead of doubling down on the thing that's working really well, sticking with it and stabilizing, right, continuing to sustain that success, they instead want to continue to scale, and then stuff starts to break. So we have to have periods where you're both scaling and then also sustaining, right? And we have to tighten up that gap, because otherwise you get spread really thin, right? And you're doing too many projects and nothing is really getting your attention. This happened to me. I launched a second company. The company was $1 million, pretty much nearly $1 million overnight, on track for that next fiscal year. And I'll be honest with you, like when I look back, I was overcommitting and overcomplicating things, probably mostly overcommitting because I still was running a second company and I just didn't have the people in place to help take those jobs and those roles and give it the attention and the energy it really needed. So that was where I was losing money and also some time. Now, what about energy? Now, when you're in a place where you're, again, a sticky point, you're scaling your vision, you're growing your team, and you're passing things off, and maybe those people are still being trained to duplicate you and multiply systems that you have in place so that you don't have to always be the one doing it, that can really tap your energy because you're spending so much time training people, right? So it might even make sense to get somebody in the role of training or in the role of operations to help oversee all of that. It also might make sense to start doing a series of recordings while you're doing that, so that anybody that then comes on that's new to the team, you have an SOP and you just plug them in and they can watch the recordings. Hey, we just trained a crew of people, or I just trained someone 90 days ago on this very same thing. I want you to watch each of these videos, one a day or whatever, and we're going to have a meeting about it later each day. Um, and the other thing is, like, you stop doing the thing that created the money to begin with. So again, as we scale, sometimes we lose our why, or we start to really spread our energy very thin, and then we miss out. We miss out on the things that actually created the money to begin with. And we stop growing and leaning into momentum. And I was just having a conversation with somebody this past week, and it was like, let's not stop doing the thing that's created momentum, because momentum creates momentum and we have to keep that going. So why stop the thing that created that to begin with? Like, we don't need to create problems that aren't there. And that's where sometimes this overthinking comes in, right? So those are a few ways that I see this happen. So how can you button this up? So something I teach is called energetic systems. I may or may not have covered this on a previous podcast, but I'm going to give you a high level overview of what that means real quick here. And we do an audit literally on your calendar. I'm like, pull up your calendar right now, and you're going to color code things that light you up with green. You're going to put the things in yellow that are kind of like meh in terms of your energy, and the things that completely drain you in red. And the things in red, they either get to be delegated or go away altogether. One of my clients that runs a $50 million company, she started realizing she had like meetings about meetings every single week. And at the time, they served a purpose, but over time, they stopped serving their purpose, because maybe she needed to have those weekly meetings with this one person who was training and learning. But like when we reevaluate that every quarter and we check in, it's not really necessary anymore at that cadence, at that frequency. So reevaluating every quarter, doing that calendar audit is huge. And then I like to work, because we're founders, I like to work in energetic systems. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all have different days. Fridays are pretty much off. I went with a long, it must have been 3 mile, 4 mile walk with my friend, Dr. Una, on Friday. And she was like, what does your Friday look like? I said, wide open. She's like, you're my kind of people. And I said, how about your Fridays? Do they tend to be open? She goes, yeah, they do. That's why I do this for a living. Like, that's why I'm a founder. So I can have Fridays off. I said, that's right. And we kind of celebrated that for ourselves. And we had Friday wide open, got to go on a walk, a nice walk and talk date. And it was amazing. But that's one of the reasons I work for myself. So Friday is a swing day. I call it a swing day because sometimes I'm traveling. Sometimes there is overflow that has to happen. But oftentimes I just want that day to be open. I don't want anything on my calendar. It's so crazy as it is. So Mondays are leadership development days. The reason I do Mondays as leadership development is because we're looking ahead to the week. Everybody kind of has their marching orders, if you will, knows what ground they're set to cover, knows what our focus is for the week. And we have, regrouped and anchored back into the work week after having a weekend off. Tuesdays, I'm here on a Tuesday. These are content production and creative thinking days. I work best in sandboxes. So this is where knowing your nervous system is super helpful. I call it a sandbox because it still has edges, but I can play inside as long as I have, open free time. I would anticipate having a call on the calendar if there was something at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever. So it's super important to have those sandbox days. Wednesdays and Thursdays are client fulfillment days. Now, it does depend on my client load and what we've got going on, but we have a master coach that works for us now too to help delegate and take clients so that I can expand and scale my time, right? Because I'm aware that the success leak of, oh my gosh, we have so many clients inside our Apex Academy now and so many people that want to work with me that I couldn't even fit in a client this week that wanted an alumni that was like, hey, I don't need a session like yesterday, but I kind of do. Like, I kind of need a session and I want to come back and I want to work with you. And I'm feeling like I need some support. And I'm like, cool. I don't have any space this week. I don't. So that's going to help me with time, right? My bandwidth there, helping to delegate some clients out that maybe aren't quite ready to work with me, aren't wanting to make that level of investment yet, but still want to make an investment in their somatic well-being and in their business and in their nervous system. They can do that with somebody on my team. So, being aware of that. And then again, it depends on how many clients in terms of workload, but I can fit most people Wednesday and Thursday. This week's a little different. I have a half day VIP trauma immersion on Friday, and that's like, again, that swing day, pretty rare, but it's a 5-hour immersion when you include in our 1-hour lunch break. And so, this week's a little bit of a sprint. So that's how I maximize both my time, right, and my energy. And the money is also part of that because if I have to push clients out and then I can't fulfill on the time because I'm capped, then I'm pushing away money. So I had to figure out a solution, which is hiring a master coach. Great. Then energy, I can't coach 24/7, right? I also need to focus on my team, like it's both and. So how can I do that? I work in those energetic systems, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? All week, each day has its own theme. It's not perfect. We do the best we can, and that's all that matters. And the other thing is we have systems, we have SOPs for things. So there's a tripwire system for everything. So it's like once I record this podcast episode, my production company, Follow Up Media, they send this to my assistant. My assistant approves and checks everything, and then I get the reel to upload on social media. But she's doing literally everything else. So it's on YouTube. You guys can catch the full episode there, which is the first time ever we've offered that, which is really cool. And, everybody knows their part. But that's because we have really specific SOPs so that I am not losing time and energy and then therefore money. So again, look at your calendar, audit it every quarter. Okay? Where are you overcommitted? Where are you overcomplicating things now? Look at where you are maybe launching new things when you should be doubling down on the things that are already working. Maybe now it's time to sustain and stabilize versus scale and sprint. You can't always be in a sprint. And, most of you that are listening to this show, you already know hard work. What you don't know as well and you're not as fluent in is relaxing and taking your foot off the gas and knowing that you're not going to break your business overnight if you take your foot off the gas a little bit. I'm not saying keep your foot off the gas. I'm saying you have to have times where you sprint and other times where you are recharging, right? Or you're going to get burned out. So knowing when you're working in sprints, that'll also help you with your time, your money, and your energy. And then overthinking, right? Are you in decision fatigue? Are you waiting to do something that like feels super easy and like low hanging fruit for you? How can you maximize and create revenue out of something you already do? And it's already there, right? So for clients, I often am like, okay, you have a referral network. That's low hanging fruit. That's already in your network. You just have to make the ask, right? It's available right here, right now. Or for me, I also connect people, right? Anybody that wants to be on this podcast or that wants to work with our lawyer, like we have affiliate commissions and things set up with different partners that are in our network that don't do what we do, but are supportive to how we want to serve and help our clients. So those are just a few tips. I hope that you took one of them away, which is, from the overcommitting, the overthinking, the overcomplicating, so that you can expand your time, make more money, and feel really energized in the process. All right, I'll see you on the next episode.